Yeah, just arrived. First of the 2024 cuvées, and first of fruit from growers along the uh, northern coast of Lake Michigan. So first we'll start with 2024 Benzie County Chardonnay. So the way the AVA system in America works, it's American Viticultural Area. This is our appellation system. Base level, it would be the state of Michigan, and then each county can act as an AVA, and then after that, there would be smaller designated areas of viticultural importance.
Sorry, each county, meaning the state gets approved, and then they have is it assumed that they're making wine in every county?
You could make a wine in any county in the United States, and that could count. You could put that on a label.
So there could be a Cook County AVA.
100%, yeah.
Huh.
And it's not the, specific geographic designated area like Leelanau Peninsula or Old Mission Peninsula. It's just within the county bounds, but you could use that as the appellation designate on the bottle. So Benzie County is not in one of the more specific geographically defined viticultural areas, but sits just under Leelanau Peninsula. Right, if you do the hand thing, and we have, this would be Leelanau here and the pinky, we're right here, kind of on the knuckle before the pinky there. So very far north. This is a vineyard called Eden Hills, and this sits on the northeastern side of a fairly deep inland lake called Crystal Lake. But then we're still, we're somewhere within 5 miles of the coast of Lake Michigan here.
Oh, wow.
How does the inland lake affect, if you know, the vineyard?
I think it's adding to the effect of having these, large bodies of water kind of surrounding it, so that this becomes a microclimate that is generally moderated and can sustain vinifera fruit. It's having a considerably smaller effect than obviously Lake Michigan. That's like the most prominent, but we're still kind of experiencing this area that is generally moderated because of these bodies of water that are deep and able to mitigate big shifts in temperature. So we're pushing back actually spring budding so that we're firmly out of the frost area, and then we are dumping tons of lake effect snow in the winter, which is insulating and moderating the vine's winter experience.
So it's interesting, you go up to Leelanau and you have Lake Michigan on both sides. So you have the climactic.
You have lake on the west side and Traverse Bay on the east, yeah.
Lake and bay.
Yeah, but the bay is very deep, and that's part of the same idea, yeah. And then Old Mission, which I'll have wines coming out in March, that's a small sliver of land with the deep bay on both sides. So that becomes a hyper special little, technically macroclimate.
And I asked you this before, where else in the world do you see any situation like this with deep water on both sides?
I'm hard pressed to tell you an area with deep water on both sides that is similar. I'm sure somewhere there's something, but on one side, this is a similar idea to, actually, technically it's on both sides, but, if you think about like vine growing in
Hey, Matt.
in England,
Is Matt Picking something up?
Yeah, he's picking up a couple bottles at Charpentier.
Does he want to taste?
Maybe. He tasted the Pinot.
Remind me how close this is to where you grew up.
Southwest Michigan stuff is way closer to where I grew up. I grew up in Allegan County, so very close to the Fenville AVA, actually in the Fenville AVA, within the Lake Michigan Shore AVA.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And when you say you were referring to we're holding back the bud trimming, I think you said, or something like that. Were you involved in the vineyard?
Not these vineyards, but more small amounts in the Southwest Michigan vineyards. Although lately I've done less just because of being more pulled.
Totally.
But the idea is to eventually have estate fruit. But it's what I was talking about was the lake pushing back budding. So
I see, not the vineyard making a decision.
Yeah, it moderates temperatures in the spring and keeps it cooler longer, and so you actually are delaying budding a little bit and then getting you out of that frosting cycle.
Got it. Is Crystal Lake a big lake?
It's fairly large for a Michigan sort of inland lake.
Guys, do you know Matt?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Ozzy. Cool jacket.
Matt started and runs Table Donkey Stick and Bar Parasite and Donkey and Pizza Dada and
We are fans.
yeah.
Yeah, I just dropped these off this morning, so.
All right, so what are you guys tasting? What's your experience here?
It's lively. It's very like bright. Much more lively than any Chardonnay I think I've had before.
Period, from anywhere.
From anywhere, yeah.
I love these like high tone fruits. I also love a little bit of volatile acidity. I think that's like, is it right to say that there's maybe
There's no BA on it.
then perhaps what I'm associating something else.
Yeah, I mean the acid's high, the pH is low, and it completely went through malic, but obviously there's still quite a bit of acid.
It's really fun.
Really long native ferment. It was like 5 months and wasn't necessarily the most sort of nutrient rich going into it, so it just like took a long time and got cold in the cellar. And so I kind of stirred to keep it going, and then stirred through mallow, and then stopped with the batonnage. But all native for both, and in barrel until first week of September, so about 10 months total, and then 2 months in bottle.
Where do you think what do you think he might be picking up on that he would be miscalling VA? What's the learning point there?
I don't know. I mean, so, some amount of acetic acid is created in all ferments. Perceivable amount is somewhere above like 0.2 parts per million, and I think this is like somewhere between like around 0.4. So in the grand scheme of things, it's very, very small. It's not until like Partita Creus would be like 1, so pretty small.
Yeah. Whatever it is I'm picking up on, I very much enjoy.
I wonder if on the first note, I don't know if you got it second, because our water is what it is, and I rinse the glasses just because we tend to have soap residue, but always sort of rinse them a second time. Is there anything in that that's possible just because just because of the glass alone.
Perhaps maybe it's like the slight acetic.
How do you feel, Alex, about the fruit, where it's at and what you were expecting during?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy. I had this the other night with. Oh man, I forgot what the food was. I had something with this, and it just turned into just like pure sort of lemon citrus.
Yeah.
And became really focused. There's a little bit more sort of, I don't know, not green apple, but more like yellow apple or something here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still pretty like austere and linear and citrus. And then it's markedly different from the stuff that's finishing up fermenting right now, which at the tail end of ferment has more sort of tropical fruit going on. I don't know if that'll be there in the end result, but it could just be esters.
Matt, can I ask you how you think about selling a wine like this? Customer
The Chardonnay,
The Chardonnay, yeah.
I think it's probably mostly for not a Chardonnay drinker, or maybe could be interesting for someone who likes, Chablis or some old world examples, but definitely like the typical, whatever, buttery Chardonnay drinker is going to be
Yeah.
surprised and probably not super on board. So I think it's more someone who's looking to explore an interesting white wine, obviously, local, so people who are excited to try a new project from a new local producer who's making kind of these obviously more terroir driven, more mineral expressive type of wines.
Too, it's like an opportunity to show someone that says like, oh, I don't like Chardonnay, and then you show them that and you say Chardonnay can be a lot of different things, and I think it's a really interesting, just like teaching opportunity too, and can really be a good avenue into like a conversation about Michigan wine, and just showcasing, this is kind of what Chardonnay can be. Obviously it depends on vinification as well, but I
do think it's very important if you're going down that role, whether it's tableside or for us, that if you say like, I'm not looking for a Chardonnay, that you pour it, don't introduce the second confounding factor, which is Michigan right away.
Sure,
right?
of course.
Just be like, oh, I've got a white you're gonna love. And that I think sounds sort of grossly unfair to you, Alex, but I think it's really more a question of just saying like, you don't know what the person's looking for. And if they want a white wine and they don't know the difference, get the wine in their glass, have them be happy, and then open the door.
My general MO is to always have people be surprised that it's Michigan, as opposed to like trying to get over whatever their preconceived notion is of it.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's the same thing as priming. Like if you're talking about a number, if you're looking at a high number, you're never going to get past that. If you're looking at your expectation of Michigan, you're never going to get past that at first until it's in the glass, and then you go back to work and you go, I had the coolest, if you're a lawyer or whatever, you go and you're talking to people at the office and it's like, I had the greatest experience with a wine. I didn't know Michigan was doing that. So. Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir. This is Leelanau Peninsula AVA. This is grown by Shady Lanes. It's their estate vineyard. It's SIP certified, sustainable viticulture. Interesting point to just not have any fruit in southwest Michigan this year. This was kind of being touted as a vintage of the century up north. So really awesome to be able to work with this fruit. 60% whole cluster. About 16 days of maceration, and then 10 months in old barrel, and 2 months in bottle resting.
Delicious.
Yeah, lignification is really good, and you get this really nice sort of. I've had a few people ask me if they're like, be like, really, there's no oak on this, because there is like almost more like a cedar than it is like over oak, but there is some sort of sense of wood on it, which is quite nice, but then quite well balanced with tons of cherry fruit on the palate.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I'm really struck by is exactly what it was when we were bottling it, which is that it jumps out as so clearly like dark fruited Pinot Noir that is of a like the pedigree here is really good. Right? Like it's the kind of thing where again we talk about making comparisons, but there are pieces in this of the cola of Fred's wines. There are pieces in this of things from Gevrey producers with a lighter touch, all of which is hard to do in terms of like communicating it, but you put your nose in like, oh, that's like my dad loves Pinot. This is one of those things where it's like, oh, if you like Pinot, I know you're gonna love this.
Yeah. Bottle on this one says 12.5%, but ABV is more like 13.
Sure.
Maybe slightly above 13.1.
I find it intensely aromatic in a good way. Like it is really jumps out of the glass.
Yeah, it's really important to me to have a real perfume style, and that's really coming from the stem inclusion. There's always this aromatic lift, whether it's sort of overtly, sometimes it's just like floral and perfumed, but you always get that aromatic lift from the stem inclusion. This year just had really, really good lignification, really woody stems. So.
I love that little like the woody, cedary finish. I think like it extends it and gives it. It's like really, really complex with the fruit. It's really, really fun.
I don't get any of that on the nose though. I get that just like on the finish, like that cedar wood or a little bit of oak, which is nice.
What are your influences for these? What are you thinking about when you're making these? How did you choose the style of vinification that you did for both of them?
With something like Chardonnay, that's very much like it's a neutral grape variety, and it just shows how it's made. I was thinking about producers in the Jura that make reductive style Chardonnay, and something that leans more into the citrus and saline side than it is like texture and butter or sort of mallow elements.
Sure.
And also just like being on these sort of clay sand soils, that style seemed like something that would ring out. With the Pinot Noir, this is very sort of like, this is the same style of winemaking really that Guillaume Brew uses.
Sure.
But also one of my favorite producers in Burgundy, Claire Naudon. This was something that I always thought about, like wines that I've had from her from the Haute Côte de Nuit and the Haute Côte de Beaune, kind of spoke a similar language to me. And it's important not to have a recipe, but then I go into it with that sort of idea, and then I change it based off of what the fruit's presenting that year.
Sure.
Where would you compare Michigan to in terms of wine growing regions?
Somebody told me once that the closest applicable region in Europe is in Hungary.
Hungary?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, the things that Michigan deals with are excess moisture, and then it is a fringe climate, but we have the moderating effect of the lake that really makes it doable. So you can look to other areas that have a fringe climate. Soils are quite mixed. We don't have limestone in southwest Michigan, but there is limestone in northwest Michigan. So soil-wise, you're dealing with stuff that's more sort of sandy loam, sand and clay, you know. So you can see that, you know, in many different areas. And it's just one of those things where like look to the fringe climates, you know.
Loam is very nutrient dense soil, right?
When there's clay, it's more nutrient dense. In sand, there's less cation activity and you have less availability. Higher elevation typically is more sand. Lower on the slopes, you'll start to see clay increase. So you can kind of see that play out in where the wine is.
When you're making these, are you thinking about the market, or is this kind of more of an artistic venture for you?
You know, I think it's one of those lucky things where I'm not making decisions necessarily based off of anything but the wines that I would want to make, or the wines that, you know, I'm really trying to make like a sense of place, and it just so happens that this tastes good. But it is marketable for that reason, right? I mean, like,
For sure.
this is an area that doesn't struggle with high alcohols. Typically, they're acid-driven wines. They're incredibly food-friendly. They play into general trends right now of like looking for something that's a little lower alcohol. So,
100%.
and you know, full ripening at that lower alcohol. So you're not lacking concentration. You're not lacking complexity. So I think it's a good place, and you know, to be at the moment. And I don't foresee it. I'm not trying to like necessarily. I don't have this like artistic hubris that I'm trying to make something that's not palatable. You know, I'm not trying to trust in my hand more than I am the base ingredients. So really, I think of it much more as a coaxing out what's naturally there, as opposed to actively creating something.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe like natural wine, also sort of, where you're like trying to maximize the most amount of information from your.
Yeah, and just like look at the wine and say what's the best wine this fruit can be, you know. So I'm not trying to like test the limits or expand the boundaries. It's really just trying to make that fruit into the best wine that it can be, and
Sure.
and so like letting that dictate the process, as opposed to it being some sort of like, I want to do this, or
Totally.
like my vision is this.
Yeah.
Matt, can I ask so you taste with everybody in the city in terms of like both collectors and just serious wine lovers and the rest, where does this fall for you in sort of the experience, and is there a context you'd want to pop this open? Is there a context you'd want to share it with somebody?
I mean, I think it's making a case that you can make really serious Pinot Noir from Michigan. I think it's got really interesting fruit character. I mean, it's like quite ripe.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it was a all whole cluster?
60% whole cluster.
60%. Where'd you end up on the acids for the 2024?
I don't know where the TA ended up, but the pHs were like 3.7. Higher alcohol, higher stem inclusion. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting to me. I feel like it is. So I pushed the cork in on that bottle too far at bottling. I saw that it was one of the bad ones.
Except I separated them for samples.
Yeah. Yeah. The janky bottling machine with the janky bottler was a bad combination of
Sure,
the two.
it's a machine. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carpenter blaming the tool.
Yeah.
But going through and tasting it, it was I almost get more components right now than I did, which I'm a little bit surprised about based on being in bottle, because it's got the nose and the fruit is directionally very much there. That idea that we talked about of No Downs wines and like the lightness and the etherealness is there, but it's almost like you're like fruit, stem, and all of the pieces are there, but it's a little bit less integrated than I thought it would be. I mean, it's just released, right? There's nothing negative in that. It's just that the pieces are more evident than they were, which is the reverse of the Chardonnay, but there was also sulfur question on the Chardonnay. But
Yeah. These are only sulfured at bottling, and
I was just gonna ask about that.
yeah, the Chardonnay had been sulfured. It was very obvious, and then it's just was resolving, and now you've got a very different wine.
What does obvious? What did that mean when you were tasting it?
like usually what happens is like you might get it washes over your palate, and then the last thing you have is like sulfur.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So it ends up being like a picture of a wine that's then not pleasant to drink because it doesn't finish.
Yeah.
And so, or it finishes with like it veers off at the end. And it's not a thing that the wine's wrong, it's just that.
It's in mid-process.
It's there doing its job of protecting its oxygen and the whole jostling of the bottling
What
system.
does happen? How does that settle out and blow off?
So a lot of it is like just the bottling process. There's so much oxygen in that's binding to the sulfur as it's going through, and the sulfur is protecting the wine from the oxygen.
I see.
And so it just is a matter of like even like opening the Chardonnay a week to 2 weeks after bottling, it was already pretty much resolved. And then it was just like letting the wine integrate and get used to being in its new environment.
To put it in terms of like Star Wars, like the force field is damaged, and it does its job. And then it's damaged a little more, but it's doing its job. And then by the end, you've defeated the Empire.
That's always the goal. Yeah.
I don't know why that occurred to me, but there you go.
Alex, not blowing smoke. These are really so fun. I'm so excited to be pushing these
Cheers.
around. These are really awesome.
Yeah, how much do you have available?
For Chicago market, there's 15 cases of Chardonnay and there's 30 cases of Pinot Noir.
And we'll focus on premise almost exclusively, and we'll talk about what that means.
Okay.
What was your total production?
Not counting the first offs, last offs, it's 42 cases of Chardonnay, and this was more like Pinot was more like 78 or something like that, 80 somewhere in there. And then there's 8 cases more on either side that I'll just keep for testing and checking in on.
So a little inside baseball thing. First off, last off means as you first push wine through, you're going to have wine that is more interacting with sort of the virgin pipe, so to speak, of the whole apparatus. And so Alex takes those and he's like, we'll set those off. And I'd be very conservative about how many we do, just so that you don't get something that got more oxygen than the rest of the run. And then last off is down where you get to correct me if I misspeak, Alex, but you get to the lees that are sitting on the bottom, so you have sediment, and so you may have a different interaction. You may either get some lees in there as well.
Typically, last offs end up being a little better than first offs, and when I get to the end of the run commercially, I'll reevaluate, and I might end up selling some of them. But it's one of those things that I'll check back in on them over time.
How many pounds of fruit yielded this amount of wine?
Pinot Noir was 1.375 tons, and Chardonnay was like just shy of a ton. It was like 0.92 tons. 1,929 pounds, if I remember.
Cool. Matt, thank you for the multiple hostings without winemakers.
Oh yeah. Happens. Hopefully that ends the run.
Yeah. Well, the fun thing too is that it's, as we've talked about, as we've talked with you guys about like flow and what works and how ways that it might improve or we can help improve, like to me, the message is like, it's an event that people like, and you get to, you know, you're talking tableside, and whether it was Alex or me, like, people were thrilled. They like, the food was great, it was so thoughtful, it was so intentional. And it just feels like a different night as a result, and I thought that was cool.
I'll try to make it in with these.
Yeah,